block.
Yes. Yes.
What else? What else is the big challenges that we have today?
Really finding those future leaders that they want to take over and have more of a responsible role. There's very few, I feel, available compared to just a few years ago that really have a passion for anything.
That's an understatement, especially for public office, and those people are actually leading our state and our country. So that's a huge challenge. What else we got? What else? I'm gonna call Angela. I'm gonna call on you because you're actually right next to my face on the screen. What are the problems you think we have? Challenges.
I would definitely say finding help and employees.
Workforce, yes.
Definitely the future leaders. I think that this generation is much different than how I grew up even. And they just have different views on working and having to work for a living, I guess.
Yes, workforce is definitely a challenge. I see you grinning, Rachel. What do you think a big challenge is? Or were you endorsing Angela's comment?
I was endorsing Angela's comment.
Yeah, I could tell. I'm a reader of body language, you guys. So it's like I can tell what's going on in your minds, even though you're this big.
Yeah, I don't have a poker face, unfortunately.
No, it's fine. So what I wanted to do is kind of give you guys some, I'm going to say ammunition, because I normally say tools in a toolbox, but you know, in the situation that we're in right now, with all of the challenges in the workforce and what we are seeing in our society, there are 10 traits to, and I've gained these over many decades of trial and error. So they're tried and true, and I've already vetted them for you. So you can take it from me that they do work. So, you know, and the best way I kind of start this is, you know, we're living in a world that's more divided than ever. Can we all agree to that? It is more divided, extra sensitive. And the way I'm a huge sci-fi nerd, so I like to say that we're all living in this weird version of Gotham City, and the bat signal is broken. So some of you got that, some of you didn't. You know, I can translate for those of you who didn't get it. But it is a huge challenge, and leadership has never been more important, which is why, you know, I retired and dedicated that's my sole purpose in life right now, is to growing our states and our region's next leaders. And so the number one thing, and this might surprise you, actually, I hope it doesn't surprise you, to actually really be a great leader, the number one trait to be a great leader is the practice of civility. Nobody's surprised at that? So yeah. yesterday was an election day, not so much, you know, active in Delaware, but, you know, we don't really have our own news outlet. So any of you, and I'm a big Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune fan, right? So every single ad leading up to yesterday was just disgusting. And it doesn't matter what side you're on or who you're voting for, who you're not. It's just the ads alone were in my opinion, disgusting. So actually practicing civility is hugely important. You cannot be a great leader if you cannot practice civility. It doesn't mean you can't disagree. That's 100%. That's, you know, that's what democracy is based on, is, you know, disagreement. But practicing civility is probably the number one trait of being a good leader. What do you guys think about that? Agree? Disagree?
100% agree.
So do we teach civility in school?
We do not.
You know, and I'm a professor at Wilmington University. Do you think we teach civility from a textbook? And I got textbooks all over my office. Do you think we teach that? Nope, not at all. And we wonder why we are in the situation that we are in, because we don't teach how to practice civility. So that is one of the, like, in my opinion, the number one trait is practicing civility. All right, so we're going to do a show of hands. Anybody worked for a crappy boss before? Okay. And that's difficult, right? So one of the best pieces of advice I got early on was, you know, to be a leader, all of the really great things that have happened to you and the mentors that have done great things for you throughout your career, do those things all the time. Those people who were crappy to you, don't ever do that to anybody ever. Easy peasy, right? I think that was the best advice that you could get. But number one is practicing civility. So Well, I'm sorry, to somebody, Jim, was that you?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Sorry.
So my number two, again, is something that is practice and having integrity. Having integrity. You guys agree?
Mm-hmm.
Do we teach integrity?
We do not.
No.
Do we in the universities and the books? Is there anything about integrity?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that you guys, I've only said two so far, so I'm hoping that you're seeing a pattern here. The things that we need to be great leaders are not things that we are learning in school. They're not things that we're necessarily teaching our children. They're things that we need to do leading by example. So having integrity. Why is having integrity important, you guys?
It builds up that trust factor. It builds up that mentorship that I want to, how do you do what you do? I want to be more like you. Your people skills, people are drawn to you, the more integrity you have.
Yep, I think trust is the perfect word there, because it's do what you say you're gonna do. And when you think about having integrity, it's not hard. Own your values, and more importantly, and this is, I teach this to our fellows all the time, is understanding what your biases are. Guys, we all have biases, all of us, and they're made up of whatever, whether it's our upbringing, whether it's our socioeconomic, whether it's our race, whether it's our gender, where we grew up, how we grew up. All of those things go into understanding and making up what your own biases are. But knowing that we all have them, and then just owning, and we'll talk about this in one of the next ones, but really just owning who you are, doing what you say you're going to do. We've all had that coworker that said they're going to do something and then didn't do it. And then you lose all integrity and trust for that person. So really having integrity is extremely important to being a great leader. And then also, I use this example all the time, not necessarily, relevant to Delaware, but, if you have an organization, all of you have organizations with values, right? You know what your mission is, and then exposing and having integrity to those values. My favorite example was, this was a few years ago, where the CEO of PETA was caught like in New York City having a steak dinner. And it's just like, are you really espousing the values and integrity of your organization and what you say you are if you're having a steak dinner in New York City and you're the president and CEO of PETA? So I think you see that, and I'm picking on politicians today just because yesterday was just such a hot mess all over the country. Having integrity as an elected official is even more important because people elect you to do a thing, right? They elect you to go represent them. So having integrity is hugely important and integral to being a great leader. Anybody arguing with the first two? Mm-hmm. Right? Civility and integrity, things we do not teach. So the third one I want to, and this is a little bit of a hockey puck that I'm dropping that you guys can bat around with me, is accountability. What do you think I mean when I say accountability as a leader?
There's
What you're gonna, what you
I
say.
see that.
Go ahead. Well, Amy, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Cindy.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I definitely see that. When I was in a leadership position, with Walmart, it was, I'm holding you accountable because I know that you can be better and you can do better. It's not to, my thing was always being fair, firm, and consistent. It's not a personal attack on somebody. It is showing that in order for us to all be successful, we need to make sure that this is being done in this way. So it's because people are so sensitive to their feelings, and I air quoted that. That's where a lot of that break is in accountability, because they feel like, why should I be held accountable? And yes, that's where a lot of the decline is.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that there's in today's work environment and political environment, everybody's pointing the finger. You did it. Wasn't me. It's because of my circumstance. I think accountability is taking responsibility for your own actions, your own team, what you're supposed to be responsible for, what your job is, whatever that is defined as. And, the civility and the integrity before that. You're taking responsibility for how you're treating others.
Yep. You're and I got to tell you, the millennials, that's the largest generation we have in our workforce right now. And I can talk about them because I have one of these little suckers. She just turned 30. So in each generation, we've done this to our kids. So, we had the boomers who were like, 9 to 5, same organization, punching the time clock, same, job for 40 years, perfectly content doing that, one in the American dream. And then they gave birth to Gen X, right? Which is I'm Gen X, and they're like, okay, fine, we want you to have things we didn't have, and still a little stern, but we were the latchkey kids. They didn't dote too much on us. And then us, Gen X, we're like, okay, so we're doing the same thing. We want our kids to have everything we didn't have. It was, you're going to college, you're getting a desk job. And then the god awful participation trophies that we gave these freaking kids, told them they could be anything they want. They're amazing. You're the best soccer player ever, but you couldn't kick a ball in the net to save your life. So we actually did this each generation. You see this paying forward. So when I say accountability is required as a leader to be a great leader, the word accountability means different things to different people, which I find very interesting. Is accountability with, I'm going to show up, and especially the new Gen Zs, is like, I'm going to show up and do what I think I need to do for my job and then go home. And it's not necessarily accountability to the mission. It's not necessarily accountability to community. So I think to be a good leader, that accountability has to be holistic, and you have to be accountable as a human. So to your community, to your family, to your organization. And I think to be a great leader, the definition of accountable doesn't mean I just have to make sure I dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Does that make sense to you guys?
It does. And I would also say that accountability for yourself, your actions, your team's actions, those people who are underneath you or working with you is true. But I also think that we as leaders hold our organizations accountable. So if we don't work for ourselves and we work for another company, if we can help them be more accountable to the environment, to people with disabilities, to make our place that we operate in better, then we as leaders need to be accountable to that, because we are all a part of a larger network. And so I would just add that piece on.
Yep, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that's one of the messages that, we beat into the heads of our fellows at Leadership Delaware all year long. Yes, you can be accountable to, your job. That's great. But, to be a leader, you need to be, it's a more holistic accountability. So yeah, that was definitely a great ad. Now, this next one tends to get people a little uncomfortable. But, I believe that life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So we're going to go right into it. So to be a great leader, one of the traits that you need to have is you need to be able to show vulnerability. And as in continuing to our pace and our path that we're hitting here, do we teach vulnerability? We do not teach vulnerability. There's no. Yeah, well, men are worse than women when it comes to this, and it's definitely gender based. It is also generational based. Vulnerability is hard. Why is vulnerability hard? And I'm talking to the gentlemen on this call. What is your deal, you guys? Why can't you be vulnerable? Come on, Clyde, give it to me.
Well, we're men that we want to show our strength, and we want to show that we have it all together. But this is what we want. We have a standard, and once we show ourselves, that shows that we're weak. When we become vulnerable, so we're just not built like that.
Yeah, your brains have a hard time reconciling the difference.
Yes.
You trust me, I've analyzed this for a couple of decades. But really, vulnerability is probably one of the most powerful tools that you can have as a leader. And why do you think that is? And why is being vulnerable so powerful?
It shows that you're human too.
Yep. We keep doing that.
Well, and it's relatable, right? And and more so now than ever, if anybody comes off as I am like I've got all of my shit together. They're lying. I'm sorry. It's just nobody has got all their shit together right now, right? We're coming out of a pandemic. We've got a divided country, even inflate, when you just name it. I mean, nobody's really got all their shit together. And if they're saying they do, then I don't know. I think they're full of it. But really being vulnerable, and Don, I think you hit the nail on the head. It kind of shows people that you are human too. And people relate to that and they will gravitate towards that. And I think, also generational, our traditionalists and our boomers, it was not, Clyde, you hit the nail on the head with that as well. It's like, nope, vulnerability is weakness. It's going to probably take us, I think we've the pendulum has kind of swung really far to with the younger millennials and the Gen Zs. I don't one of them that's not, struggling with some mental health issue. And not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just they acknowledge it more, and they understand that vulnerability, and making sure that they address that is huge. But as a leader, being vulnerable is hugely important. Not an easy trait, not a teachable trait. It's just you have to lead by example, and you've got to let that guard down. And I'm a perfect example of that. I anybody who knows my story, I mean, I came from a not so great background, and it took me probably about 15 years to share my story. And it actually took an interaction with one of the kids at the Greater Dover Boys and Girls Club, which I'm on the board there, and having an interaction with that young girl. It's like, what, this is me, 30, 40 years ago, and I should tell this little girl my story. And then just being vulnerable really is kind of cathartic. It was very freeing. Like, and anybody who's a Brene Brown fan knows that, the most powerful emotion on the planet is shame, and being vulnerable can just wipe that emotion out. So I think it's extremely important. Now, I'm not saying go around being all loosey-goosey with your employees and letting them do whatever they want to do. That's not what I'm saying. But being vulnerable as a leader, and showing that emotional side is really, really important. And quite frankly, I think some of our politicians could use a dose of that myself, because none of them are great either, right? I mean, they're not perfect humans. And I think they would probably be a little bit more relatable if they showed that vulnerability. So that one is huge. And then this next one, you guys are going to laugh because it's super easy. And we teach this out the wazoo. Great leaders need to be able to communicate effectively. I deal with corporations all the time, and I can tell you 90% of their issues come from bad communication or miscommunication. Every single organization is. So it's not you, and we teach communication. We got that one, right? We teach that until the cows come home, right? There's all kinds of courses on communication, but the word that is in my dictionary next to communicate is effectively. And we talked about multiple generations in the workplace. You have to understand as a leader, you cannot communicate to a traditionalist and a baby boomer the same way you're communicating. Danya, I see that head shaking. You just can't do it. And for lots of different reasons. One, because each generation is motivated by different things, right? Each individual is motivated by different things. I'm a Gen Xer, so I want to talk in person. I can't even stand Zoom. I want to be in person. I wish we were all in a room together right now. But like my daughter, she don't want to make a phone call. She's like, Mom, can you just do this for me? I'm like, you're 30. Make your own damn doctor's appointment. But they would rather do everything electronically, right? So as a leader, it's not just okay to communicate. And up for with us, it's like communicate. You can't over communicate. Yeah, you can. If you're not doing it effectively, you're wasting everybody's time. So understanding, your employees, understanding how they want to be communicated with, and it's exhausting because it's the same message, but you got to give it 5 different ways, right? You got to send that text, do that personal phone call, send that email, and then also do a face-to-face. But that is the nature of the workforce that we are in right now, you guys. So being a leader, it's tiring. It's tiring just talking about it. But it is really important to be a great leader. You've got to be able to communicate effectively across the board. And I've got great examples of where I've done really well with that. And I've got great examples of where I was an epic fail. I'll give you one of my epic fails. When I first became Secretary of Department of Transportation, all of the stuff was with still paper plans. Like they would, all the plans for all these big projects, they would have all these rolls of stuff and they would take them out in the field and put them on the, the front of the pickup truck and make changes and take them back and, and put the stuff in the computer. And like, this is the most ineffective process on the planet. And then I was like, I'm going to modernize all of it. And I felt like Oprah Winfrey, everybody was getting an iPad. I'm like, you get an iPad, you get an iPad. It's going to be great. And then we brought them all together actually at Polytech and put them in that auditorium. And we're like, everything's automated. But what I didn't realize is I'm communicating, we're modernizing all this. And I gave these iPads to all of these very diverse people. So my boomers couldn't even figure out how to turn the damn iPad on. And then my fresh out of the college engineers were like, what, old dog, why are you taking so long? Why can't you figure out how to use this? So I realized that I couldn't just give everybody an iPad and go, here, it's automated now. The way you communicate that has to be different. You have to, and so what I ended up is mentoring the two, because the old guys had all the information and they had years and years and years of experience out in the field, and the young guys just had the technology. So we ended up having them mentor each other. But it was an epic fail on my part, thinking we're just going to roll all this out and everybody's going to, hold hands, and these projects are going to, time to deliver them is going to be cut in half. So you really need to understand that you have to communicate effectively based on your employees, not your communication style. You have to understand how they want to be communicated with. Make sense? And we teach communication, but we don't teach how to communicate effectively. So yeah, I guess my entire talk here today is all the things that we should be learning in school that we are not learning in school. So the next one, it seems like a no-brainer to me, but it does get lost in the sauce a lot, is great leaders empower their people. I see head shaking. We've all been, I'm sure, I know I've been, I've reported to a leader who really was not a good leader, just really wanted to keep all the employees down. It was power hungry. Sometimes there's egos involved, but a good leader will get out of the way and let their people shine. And I was a firm believer in this. I'm still a believer in this. You take zero credit and you take in my case, all the punches, as I used to say, but really empowering your people. And it's really a motivating factor. Sometimes people don't understand that, and different things motivate different people. But what I found in my 30, I'm not saying how long, because that makes me feel old, but my long time in leadership is really what motivates people is they want to be on the cool jobs, right? They want to go to the cool conference. They want time with the boss, or in some crazy cases, I want to go to legislative hall and be seen. Do all of those things for all of your people. Rachel, I know some people really like doing that. It made my skin crawl, but anyway, lots of people like that. So finding out really what motivates your people, and it is different things, but then empowering them to go do that. So that is extremely, extremely important. And do we teach how to empower people? No, we do not. We do not. But again, empowering your people is probably one of the biggest things. And all of these other things that we're talking about, vulnerability, effective communication. If you empower your employees will be loyal to you no matter what. And I think sometimes people don't necessarily understand that. Like, well, I'm gonna dote on them and I'm gonna give them all the cool stuff to do, and then they're just gonna leave. Well, if you empower your people and they get to shine, and you shine that light on them, they will. I'm not saying they're never gonna leave, but they will be loyal to you. And then the next one is interesting, because it's interesting how I explain this. So the next trait to the secret sauce of leadership is great leaders embrace learning. And when I say embrace learning, I don't mean, they learn the new AI chat GPT on how to do that. I'm not saying that. They learn by experience, right? You learn how your employees are interacting with each other. You learn, and I call it's actually group learning as well. And most learning happens when you fail, and great leaders aren't afraid to learn by failing. And they also create an environment. Yeah, and trust me, I come from government, so there's no group more risk adverse than government, right? But creating that environment where not only the leader embraces learning, but you create that innovative environment so that your employees can also embrace learning. And you've all known that person who's, oh, they're the CEO or they're the secretary or they're the senator, and they think they know everything. And my favorite is, and I've been around long enough that I see elected officials come in with all these great ideas, and even governors come in with all these great ideas. Like, nobody's ever thought of this before. It's like, consolidate, unconsolidate. Come on. Yeah, no. The worst thing you can do as a leader is think that you know everything, because you absolutely do not know everything. You guys agree? Anybody got a good example? Come on, anybody want to rag on their boss of dumb shit they've done? All right, I'll do one. I'm no problem. It's another epic fail. You guys are getting like all the JCO epic fails. So when I was running the DMV, and don't get me wrong, it was completely broken when I got it, and I broke it even further and then fixed it. But I'm a transformational person. That's my leadership style. I just want to go in and just do all the things, right? And always wanting to do more, learn more. And so we got the DMV. We went from being the worst in state agency to actually being the best DMV in the country. Super proud of that. But I was on this, let's just keep on. And so I remember it's like, oh, we're going to do a mobile DMV. It's like, let's just get one of these dart buses and retrofit it and put computers and stuff in there. It's going to be great. We'll take it to community centers and senior centers, and it's going to be wonderful. And we did. And I remember being at this national conference, you guys, and I was so proud. I'm like, yeah, we got this mobile DMV. We're winning awards for it. And then the Pennsylvania Department of Motor Vehicle secretary, he starts laughing at me. I mean, like literally laughing in my face. I'm like, dude, that's not nice. And I'm like, why are you laughing? And he's like, well, you live in Delaware. You've got 4 DMVs. You can, anywhere you are in Delaware, you can get to a DMV in 20 minutes. Why in the hell do you need a mobile DMV? And I was like, ooh, excellent point, sir. Excellent point. So my point was, that was an epic failure. Did we need that? No. I was transforming just to be transforming. And sometimes you need to check yourself with that. Yeah, you guys are getting all the JCO epic fail. So I'm going to stop self-defecating and move on. So the next trait, I think, in my opinion, probably one of the most important ones, is great leaders are authentic. Right? Authentic. And there is nothing I hate more than a fake ass person. And I can sniff it out a mile away. And whether you're being fake, like you're all that, or you're being fake, it just, you've got to be your authentic self. And this is hard. And guys, I'm picking on you again. It's a little bit harder for men. Being your authentic self means embracing all of your strengths and all of your weaknesses, right? And sometimes that's extremely hard for people to do, because first of all, you have to acknowledge that you have weaknesses, and we all have them. Anybody who tells you that they don't, I mean, and you have to know what your biases are. What you can, there's things I can do and things that I can't be around OPKs. Other people's kids, can't stand them. So I don't, my husband and I have things like, if we're going to go to an event, is there going to be OPKs there? Nope, then we're not going. So I know that, to be my authentic self, I can't be around other people's kids, right? So that's just a small, silly example, but being your authentic self is extremely important to be a leader, because also if you keep faking, and it gets exhausting, and you're going to forget what you said to who and how you portrayed yourself and trust me, I'm 51, so I forget crap all the time. So you actually become, the less authentic you become, the less trustworthy, the less people are going to take you seriously, because they're going to know that you're being fake. Make sense? Authentic.
Yeah.
Authentic. Anybody got an example of authentic or not authentic? I'm not giving you any more of my failures.
I don't know if it's all, an example specific, but, as I've grown more and matured more, it's just become really freeing to say, I'm not okay. I am far from perfect, and just, it's okay, and I don't have a problem telling anybody like I'm not okay, or this is an area that I'm not very good at. So I think it just, for me, it's come with maturity as well.
Mm-hmm. Maturity and experience, for sure. and that's why, I make fun, like I said, because I have one of these little suckers. The millennials do get a bad rap because of that. They are more apt to say, I'm not going to work for this company unless I believe in what they're doing. We've seen the millennials really, a lot of them jump ship from career to career, and we take that as, well, oh, you don't have any work ethic. They're just being authentic to themselves, right? So I think they're getting a little bit of a bad rap for that. And then the new generation coming in. I mean, guys, for them to be authentic, some of them will never see an office the way we've seen offices, right? They may never work in the same environment. And, I teach a whole course on how to lead in a hybrid work environment. So it is very, very challenging, extremely challenging. And it's hard for people to come off authentic via Zoom or via Teams. I don't want to leave anybody out. It's very hard. You can read facial expressions, you can read body languages, but it's very hard to get that authenticity unless you are in person. You can do it, but it's much more difficult. So there's different tips and tricks on how to be authentic in a virtual world. And then here, I'll tell you another. Well, this is my husband's fail. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with AI. So he's a big user. He retired from government as well, and he does residential real estate. And he's got a virtual assistant. Basically, it's an AI assistant that presents itself presents itself as if it were him. And that just skeeves me so much, because you're not being authentic. And then these people, some of them think they're having a conversation with you, and they're not having a conversation with you. And then when they ask something that your AI assistant can't answer, then you're scrambling going, oh, you're like 10 sentences into this conversation with this person, and you haven't even interacted with them. That, to me, I know that's where we're heading with the future, but I think that challenges, in my opinion, authenticity, because it's like these people really think that they're interacting with the human, and they're not. And you're seeing more and more of that. So anyway, that's like my little tirade on my husband's virtual assistant.
And I'll offer one up real quick.
Sure.
So I was going to different meetings, and the same person was in the same meeting, different meetings, but they were present in each time. And what I noticed was every time leadership came in the room, someone higher, right, they pivoted to be more in line with theirs, I guess, to appease them. And so they just found points where they were just like, me too, that's me too. Oh, you're going through a divorce, I'm sorry to hear that, me too. Or you're, and everything was like, I've talked to you for like over a year, and you've never mentioned, here I'm thinking we had a relationship, never mentioned that, I've been to your house, I put my feet under your table, and you've never mentioned I've met your husband. So, but then, she go to another meeting, and she says something that's like out of left field. And so she kept pivoting depending on who the leader was in the room. And I'm just like, wow, that must take a lot of energy. So to your point, yeah.
Yeah, that actually, I've seen it happen a bazillion times, so I understand completely. So that makes me sad, and it makes me sad because that's fake, right? That's not being authentic. But when that happens, what I call, that person has inner game issues. If they feel, can you imagine the stress and anxiety that you feel if you feel like you've got to placate to every single person that's higher up than you? That's got to be exhausting. So her inner game issues are tough.
Self-esteem.
Yeah, it really breaks my heart, because that's all that is. If you feel like you have to do that, and based on your description, it was almost like it was like necessary for her to feel like she had to do that, and that's a little heartbreaking for me. Oh, you should have her call me. I'll fix her up. No problem. I got that. But yeah, I do feel, that inner game issue. And then, the other thing, and being authentic to yourself means that you always have to be playing your own long game, especially nowadays. I call this, people get stuck in the thick of thin things. Like, it's hard to explain, like, whatever the woke issue of the day is, like, if you get caught up in the thick of thin things, you aren't playing your own long game. And your own long game should be whatever it is you want to be, whatever it is you want to do. And it could be anything. You want to be a CEO. So that's your long game. You know, your personal vision. I want to do, you know, I want to be a superstar in my community. Whatever your long game is, you should always be playing that as your authentic self and not get stuck in the thick of thin things. I see happen all the time. And again, I feel like I'm picking on the younger generation, but I see this happen with my fellows all the time. They'll have a life event, and I've lived through many life events, good and bad. And they will get stuck in that, and they will get bogged down in that instead of, you know, addressing it head on, dealing with it, and then moving on. You can't get stuck in the thick of thin things. And it might not seem like it's a thin thing at the time. But to be your authentic self, you always have to be playing your own long game and not get stuck in the thick of thin things. I see it happen way too much, and I just want to snatch people up. But well,
That is very true.
Yeah.
That's a very true statement.
Thank you. I'm going to take that as an endorsement by the Central Delaware Chamber of Commerce. That's what I say. And then the last one, well, the last big one, is something, and I know that you guys are all community leaders, so I know that you do this, is great leaders serve others. That's just part of being a great leader. You serve others. And that means, it could mean anything. It can mean, you know, in your community, it could mean in your church, it could mean in your organization, it could mean in your secret society of wise women, Judy. It can be anything, but great leaders serve each other. So those are my top 10. And of course it's funny because I didn't want to show my PowerPoint because I wanted you to see me and I wanted to see your faces and not look at a screen. But we can, Cindy, we can share the presentation with everybody that is on the call. So you guys have all this. So the secret sauce of those 10 great things, right? And then I have what I call secret sauce toppings. So some additional things to spread on your secret sauce. And one is reward excellence. And I don't mean you have to give pay raises or dollars but reward excellence. When somebody does a good job, just tell them that they do a good job. It could be somebody walking an old lady across the street. Just tell people, I can tell somebody that they look nice. Give compliments, reward excellence. It's hugely important. And then give generously. And I don't mean money. Money's great. I mean, you know, support your local nonprofits. But when I say give generously, the biggest thing and the most valuable thing we all have is time. And I can tell you that and trust me, I had 2,500 employees reporting to me, and it's hard, but I can tell you, I'm lying to you. I'm at DMV. I knew every DMV employee name. I didn't know all the Delta ones, but I did know every DMV employee name. And if you just stop in the hallway and you give that eye contact, or if you're in a meeting, you give 100% of your attention, that is just huge. You can't give generously mostly of your time. And then be fair. I know that sounds kind of silly. Of course we're fair, right? You got to be careful with fairness. And fairness is not equity. Fairness is not diversity. Fairness is, you know, treating everyone the same, right? Regardless. And again, this is not diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm not talking about that. If you want to hear about that, talk to Dr. G. But I mean, just being fair with everything across the board. And then, you know, be positive, spread positivity. You know, it's so much easier to smile. And then we all know that grumpy Gus or that negative Nancy is just toxic. Cut them out. You know, there's two things that you'll never change on a person. One is their personality and one is their ego. You will never be able to change a person's personality. If they are naturally grumpy or negative, cut them out. Trust me. I've spent decades trying to save people and resuscitate people, and some people you just cannot do it. It took me a long time to realize that. But just spread positivity and cut negativity out. And then be present, right? When you're having, and I'm not picking on anybody who's not on camera right now, but there's nothing worse than giving a talk like this and not having that interaction and not having that feedback. Be present in everything that you do. And if it's not worth you being present for, then don't do it, right? You know, and you guys all heard that in the 80s and 90s, multitasking, that's a bunch of hoo-ha. That's the stupidest thing that's ever created. If you're multitasking, you're only giving 10% to 10 things. So you're half-assing everything, right? So yeah, be present in everything that you're doing. And if it's not worth your full presence, then just don't do it. and then have fun. I know that sounds silly, but life is way too short to not have fun. If you are not having fun, then go do something else or make a sock puppet on the wall. Just have fun. So those are the secret sauce toppings for the top 10 great traits for the secret sauce of leadership, you guys. And I did want to leave a little bit of time at the end, Cindy, if that's okay. If anybody had any questions, any comments that they wanted to make, any inquiring leadership. I do, I teach this stuff. I live, breathe, eat, sleep this stuff. My poor husband, he is a saint because every new leadership book, I read them all. Some of them are good, some of them are crap. So if you need any book recommendations, let me know. I just wanted to open up the floor to any questions that you guys may have for me.
And I have a question. I'm sorry I came in a little late. I'm Jen Sutter, Director of Membership for the Chamber. I was just curious, and this is what I dealt with a lot in my former job, is dealing with cattiness. Like I found that to be the most annoying thing. You come in the morning and there's a coffee clutch of hens just, but they're not making any suggestions, not making any changes. They're just bitching. You know what I mean? How is that something you can kind of, because I would just walk by and I'd be like, have a good day, ladies. Like, it would just make me nuts because it's like, it's not even 7:55 and you're already bitching, you know?
Already wound up from
And
everything.
I hate to be frank about it, but I'm a New Yorker, but that's exhausting to me. And it wasn't even my deal. I could just walk away, but it was just, I found it to be a background annoyance.
Yeah. Oh, and it's
because,
it's mostly noise. So I would get worked up about it and then realize that, and some people's personalities, depending on where they, and I have a whole thing on personalities, they don't mean harm, but as a leader, you need to be able to find the ones that do mean harm and then turn it. And when I say turn it, okay, say they're bitching about, I don't know, what are they bitching about? Pay raises? Well, nobody's gotten a pay raise. I'm just making this up.
no, it was usually like, oh, well, she got this privilege or she did that, or she just left it for somebody else to do. And it was like, and I would say to them, did you bring it up?
Yeah.
Well, no.
Or what?
Okay. So you're not going to bring it up, but you're going to stand here and whine about it.
Yeah. So what the one phrase that I always it work, it doesn't always work. So don't get, that's not, there's no silver bullet for all this, but what would you have done differently? I try to use those words, like, what would you have done differently? What would you have done if that was you? Or what would you have done if you were that person's supervisor? And then at least it gets them to think of solutions maybe, and not necessarily just bitching for the sake of bitching. But some people are just going to do that.
Yeah.
You can
That was just something that drove me nuts. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. I understand. And then favorites, people think there's favorites. Sometimes there are and sometimes there's not, but that's for the leader to being fair. If you're going out to happy hour with the same person that, is a supervisor that works underneath of you twice a week, whether you're being fair or not, the perception of that is going to be a problem.
Right, you need to invite everybody.
Yep.
And who shows up, at least you invited them.
Yep, exactly. Any other questions for me?
Then when your leader is younger, because like I'm just looking at our group here, and not to say anyone's age, but what I'm seeing is leaders trying to sharpen their tools in their wheelhouse, right? Older leaders. But when your leader is younger than you, any different recommendations for them or the person that's underneath a younger leader?
Yeah, so I coach this a lot, and it's a little tricky. It is a challenge, and and you know what? Some of these younger leaders are really amazing. I mean, they are amazing people. They're super smart. As long as there is a healthy respect for the maturity and the experience of the person that they're supervising, that tends to be where I think sometimes things get lost. It's like, yes, you may be smarter, you're coming in at a higher level, you're supervising all these people, but that respect of experience is something that is imperative. And it's easy to bring up, and most of the younger leaders are receptive to that. It's just not, they don't practice it because they haven't had to practice it, right? So that respect of experience, I think, is the biggest key to the success of a younger leader supervising older folks. And then, and there's nothing wrong with people, and I'm not saying 360 reviews, we're going to tell this, anonymously tell the supervisor or the CEO that they suck, but I'm saying real positive feedback. Most leaders find that helpful, right? Like if I know I did. It's like, yeah, tell me, I don't know what I don't know what I don't know. And if I need to communicate with you differently, tell me how, because I might not have the skill set that I can go get to do that better. But that respective experience, I think, is the biggest key that I've seen go really well and also go really, really badly.
Hey Jen,
Great, thank you.
Can you guys hear us from DTW?
Yes.
Okay, great. So one of our managers had a quick question. You might just have to speak up.
Yeah. Hey, Jen. How are
Hey.
you? So I have a quick question. So you talk about being positive and remaining positive even when you have negativity. So I'm struggling with that a little bit right now because I have 2 employees who are constantly negative. So can you just help me, like, how do I stay positive when I have a lot of negativity?
And I think real quick to add to Danielle's point, they're very negative, but both vocalize wanting growth and wanting the next step, but like their mindset and perspective is not even anywhere in the same bucket of where we would expect it to be.
And I can also try to empower them, but it's almost like they don't want to learn things that I'm trying to teach them.
Okay, well, first of all, tell them to call me. I can fix them too. And I would, so here, I'm going to teach you just a quick trick on how to stay positive even when everything around you is being negative. And it's just 2 words. It's yes and, right? And you guys at GT, but you didn't mean to do this, but you said, and I just did too. You just said, but. If you try, when you're dealing with negative people and you say yes and with everything, you will control the conversation, you will control the tone, and still help them to be positive. And teach that to them too. So correct them when they're being negative. Say yes and turn it to something else instead of no but. You'd be surprised. It's a little wonky at first because you're like, oh yes and, but you really want to say negative people want to be a no but people. Right. That sounds really weird when I say it. But that's how negative people, and keep in mind, that's their personality. So they need to be coached, and coaching and counseling are 2 different things. You guys know that, right? Coaching is where you're going to help the individual person with their emotions and how they communicate. Counseling is, hey, you need to do a better job with this. I'm going to help you with actually your job itself. So coaching them with a yes and mentality will help them from swinging negative, but you got to stay on it. It's exhausting, you guys. And then understand that when it is no longer working or it's not sinking in, let them know that they're not going to be able to grow until they change that mindset. You're just going to have to, I mean, the yes and it will help. And if it doesn't work, then they need to understand that it is your negativity is impacting your future growth in this organization. And as a human, I mean, nobody wants to be around that crap.
No.
I know. I spent years being around that crap, and I just no. Yes and just yes and my way right out of it.
Thank you.
I was in the hospitality business for 20-something years, and so I had a lot of young people learning to work. And I noticed, was taught at a young age that, I praised the ones that were doing really good. So the ones that were doing bad, I don't know if it was a good thing, would notice that, you do good things, you're going to get praised.
Yeah, and I think you said a good word, Cindy. These guys are learning. Let them learn and help them learn by coaching them along the way. They may not understand fully that the negative atmosphere and the negative persona that they are, they're probably, I mean, I would even have the conversation with them, you guys, like, do you know that this is how people are perceiving you by being like this? Because nobody really wants to be perceived that way. They're still learning, and they need and mentor. And I didn't even talk about this, but mentoring is extremely important. Sponsoring is extremely important for great leaders. But again, just understand, and we're all learning. Remember, that was one of the traits. We're all learning. We're all learning how to communicate better, and especially this new crazy Gotham City no bat signal world that we're living in. We're all learning. So I think understanding that and helping people with that is important.
And maybe if they do, these negatives do something good, at least say something to them, so you can maybe pull the positive out.
Yep. And if you as a leader stay positive, that it's more contagious than you think. And again, I'm all about, why I'm obsessed with figuring out the way people, why they act the way they do. But positivity is extremely contagious. Negativity is extremely contagious. So you got to choose to be, and trust me, nobody wakes up with rainbows and butterflies shooting out their butt every day, but you really have to practice that positivity. It's a practice.
It's funny.
Jen, I just want to call attention to the question in the chat box by Dennis Burke. Denise, sorry, I don't have my glasses on. What are some of your favorite leadership books?
So I have two. Well, my favorite leadership book of all time is called The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. It's been redone, time and time and time again, but it is fantastic because it talks about organizational learning disabilities and organizational learning disciplines. That is my favorite. And then my current favorite one is called Post-COVID. And what that does is it kind of goes over all of the things that, well, communication is a perfect example. It goes into detail about that. Is, COVID put everything on steroids, like especially communication and hybrid workforce. What we thought management gurus in the world thought would take 10 years, literally got accelerated into 6 weeks with COVID. And the workforce wasn't ready for that. So post-COVID is a really good kind of book to read on how to manage right now with what we're dealing with the hybrid work and the hypersensitivity, all of those things. So those are two of my favorite. How to Win Friends and Influence People is a major, awesome one that's, communication based. I could show you all of my books, but I don't think we have enough time. But those are probably my three tried and true. And then, post-COVID is just kind of blew my mind. I couldn't put down. Welcome. All right. Any other and guys, and feel free here. Let me put my, I think you have this, but put my email address. So we have this stuff.
We could maybe let everyone go around, introduce themselves. We still have a little bit of time.
Well, I'm going to do a shameless plug for Leadership Delaware now, if that's okay.
Okay.
So I put my email address in there. Check us out, leadershipdelaware.org. What we do is we have multiple things. We have a year-long program, which is a leadership immersion program, and so we focus on creating the bench of leaders for Delaware, and we do that 30 at a time. And we bring in 150 speakers from every different emerging business sector, because everybody ends up in their silo, whether they're healthcare, education, military, whatever. So we spend a year really focusing on different business sectors in Delaware and tackling some tough topics. Like, I make sure to be not just to be a better human, but to be a better leader. You need to understand all sides of a situation. So, I'll bring in somebody pro-life, and I'll bring in somebody who isn't in the afternoon. We'll have a, policing session where we'll have, police chiefs, and then somebody who's defund the police, just so all sides of the situation and issues can be talked about. So that's our year-long program. But what we also offer is something called our Leadership Development Series. And we actually just had one at Chesapeake Utilities in Kent County, and we're going to do another one in the spring, which is a 6-module course where I actually teach the new emerging leadership, all of the 10 traits that I talked about, along with some public policy and some communication. So that's a 6-week course that I personally teach, that we offer. So encourage any of you to look into any of that. And then if you just want to have coffee and chat and with me, happy to do that. My email address is in there, and everybody who knows me knows that I'm super accessible. And it's been fun chatting with you guys this morning, even though I've only had 1 cup of tea, so I'm going to go get another one now.
It was great.
So thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Great rest of your day.
Thanks,
too.
Jen. And good morning, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jen.
I see you two cuties. How you doing?
Oh, doing
Yeah,
great.
they're ready for their 5-star now.
Yeah, I'm excited. I told you guys you were very
Yeah.
close. Awesome. So you're going to be at the November mixer, yeah?
Oh, I don't think we're gonna be able to make that. We'll be out of town.
Okay, so
We're on our way
January.
to, we'll be on our way to Dominican Republic.
oh
That'd be
well,
nice trip.
because, you know, you're not gonna stay here and get pinned, you're gonna go to the beach. Okay, no, I get it. That's all right. That's all right. But, all right, so January, what we'll do is we'll do the pinning ceremony.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, because December is just the Christmas party. We don't really have a mixer, so. Well, you guys enjoy, yeah.
All right. Thank
Look
you.
at
Stop in for another coffee coaching.
All right. This was nice. This was beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah, she was very good.
It was.
she is. She's a
Yeah.
great speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have them all the time. We don't have them in December, July, and August are the only months we don't have them.
Yeah.
And they're all on archive too. So if you guys ever want to go back to the website,
Uh-huh.
you'll see them there. They're archive videos. So you could just watch them at your leisure, you know?
Oh, okay.